Credited with bringing Doctor Who back to life is quitting the show. Writer and executive producer Russell T Davies has decided not to work on the 5th series. However, he will help on the specials over the next 18 months.
And that was how we found out, officially, that Russell was going. I say officially, because let's face it, the fact that Russell was considering moving on is possibly the worst kept secret in science fiction fandom. The real question wasn't whether Russell would go or even when. Most people thought it would be quite soon. Let's face it, the other producers had moved on as well. The real question is who is going to replace Russell? Welcome to this week's Tin Dog Podcast. We discovered the answer to that question with Steven Moffat. Now, for fans of New Doctor Who, Steven Moffat is the writer of some of the best received stories of the past 4 seasons. The next two-parter, the one coming up, is written by him, so you'll be able to judge for yourself. But stories like Blink and The Doctor Dances are classics that will stay with Doctor Who fandom forever. Moffat's track record as a writer goes back an exceptionally long time, by modern standards. His first major break in TV was a kids' show called Press Gang, which gave Julia Sawalha her first big break. The writing, the construction, and the programme as a whole is still held in exceptionally high regard, so much so that it has its own fan clubs. His other projects have been exceptionally well received. The only one I've not been particularly fond of was his last major project, Jekyll, starring James Nesbitt, an actor who I am not the fondest, and one that seems to keep cropping up on lists for who should play the next Doctor. I personally would prefer an actor like Michael Sheen, but that's a whole different podcast for a whole different time. Moffat also worked on the sitcom Coupling, which proves that he has a background in Doctor Who, a background in comedy, a background in horror, and is a very talented author. At the moment, however, he won't be taking over in Doctor Who land, mainly because he's writing the new Tintin movies. Now they're going to be very interesting. I met Steven Moffat once at a Doctor Who convention where he talked about the writing of his very first Doctor Who story. He wrote for the alternative 9th Doctor, not the audio or webcasts, but for the comedy charity special starring Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor, and Richard E. Grant, and Hugh Grant, and Joanna Lumley, and anyway, you get the feeling that he loves Doctor Who. One of the things that has saddened me, though, is that some people seem to be overly pleased that Russell's moving on. This is a man we owe an enormous amount to. Without him, the series would not have come back. You would not be listening to this, and we would not have the best programme in the universe to watch. This is a man who not only understands the programme, but understands the media's relationship with it. You might not agree with all of his choices, you might not even like many of his scripts, but without him, we wouldn't be here. So I'd like to say thank you, Russell, and I'm glad you're staying to give us some specials next year. Whether the series changes at all, I personally have my doubts. Steven's an enormous fan of Russell's work, and I for one see this more as a regeneration, the same role being filled by someone of equal, if slightly different talents. Traditionally, Doctor Who producers, such as JNT, that's John Nathan Turner, and RTD, that's Russell, were referred to by their initials. Well, as Steven Moffat just has 2 initials, it just doesn't quite work. It doesn't have that same gravitas. So I, for one, would like to suggest that we call him the Moff. Perhaps the Grand Moff. Or would Lucasfilms come round and have a go at me? Does it matter? I suspect not. Next time I'll be reviewing The Unicorn and the Wasp. Then there'll be a short gap while the 2-parter, written by Steven, is on the BBC. Be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.